Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. All right, buckle up for this one because it's a classic I don't work here lady moment with a side of extra Karen. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Karen confuses customer for employee, demands soda, ends up banned. I've worked in a lot of food establishments since I was 16, and one of the places I worked at was a taco joint with a bell. It's been almost 2 years since I left, but one day I decided to stop in for lunch, despite how ridiculous it seemed. I was craving 3 tacos, and I thought it wouldn't hurt. I hadn't been to this location in a while, and I was wearing my current restaurant uniform, which is for a waffle place where I now work. I placed my order, chatted with the cashier, who still worked there when I did, grabbed my food and some sauce, and sat down. Everything was fine. Until it wasn't. I heard the worst phrase ever. "Excuse me, I need help with this." I thought she was talking to someone else, or maybe even an employee walking by, but I was wrong. This wasn't meant for anyone else. With a bit of a huff, she said, "Hey, are you ignoring me?" I was facing away, so I wasn't paying attention, and yes, I was ignoring her. She raised her voice and called out, "Hey, you, girl!" I finally turned around to see what she was yelling about, and to my surprise, she was talking to me. I was so confused. "Are you talking to me?" She snapped, "OMG, finally! Yes, I need another soda. I've been out for over 10 minutes, and you've just been sitting here ignoring me. This is terrible customer service." I replied, "Ma'am, I don't work here." She interrupted me, "Yes, you do. I heard you talking about your job to the last person at the register. I want more soda, and I want you to get it. Now." First off, even if I did work there, there's no one in the dining room who serves soda. It's all self-serve. Also, I was in an entirely different uniform from theirs, and I was clearly having lunch, so I had no idea why she thought I worked there. I was just so dumbfounded I didn't know what to say. She demanded, "If you don't get your butt up and get my soda, I'll make sure you get fired. I know the owner of this place." At this point, I was done with the conversation. I pointed to the self-serve soda station. "It's self-serve right there, but you'll need a new cup from the lady at the register," I said, trying to remain polite. "I need to finish off my food and get to work. Have a good day." She snapped back, "You definitely need to get to work, you fat bee." I lost it. "Look, lady, I don't work here, and even if I did, you have no right to talk to anyone like that. How dare you?" She was having none of it and shouted, "I'm calling the manager." I shot back, "Good, if you don't, I will." The manager, who I had worked with for a few years, came out. He walked up to us and said, "Hey you, what's going on? How's the new job?" I replied, "Oh, it's great, but..." Before I could finish, the entitled lady jumped in. "Your worker won't get me a refill, and it's just rude." The manager looked at her, confused, and said, "She doesn't work here. She did years ago, but now she runs the waffle place." I laughed, popped in my earbuds, turned up the music, and went back to my food. In the end, I got some coupons for free combos, and the woman got kicked out and was told not to come back. What a wild ride. First off, kudos to you for keeping your cool as long as you did, because, wow, that lady was on a power trip for no reason. Also, free combos for dealing with that nonsense. That's what I call turning a chaotic moment into a win. Props to you for standing your ground and walking away with tacos and dignity intact. And our second story. Line-cutting driver gets flocked, Seagull chaos on the Galveston Ferry. If anyone here has traveled from Galveston, Texas to Crystal Beach, Texas, you know it's a nightmare. You have to take a ferry where you wait in line for 2 to 4 hours depending on how much traffic there is, drive onto the ferry, sail across the bay, and drive off the ferry onto the Bolivar Peninsula. The line for the ferry forms on a 2-lane road, the idea being one line is for the ferry and the other is for the locals to get around. However, it's all too common for people to skip 100% of the line and cut in at the last second, despite there being a ton of signs that say no line cutting and Galveston PD driving around ticketing people who line cut. So there I am, being a dutiful citizen and waiting in line for the ferry, way far into hour 3 of the wait. and I'm almost to the gate when this D-bag cholo comes flying in and cuts me off. So there I am, being a dutiful citizen and waiting in line for the ferry, way far into hour 3 of the wait, and I am almost to the gate when this D-bag comes flying in and cuts me off. I start flashing my lights and honking, trying to alert the police around, but get nothing, and the guy has the audacity to flip me off and settles into the line. 10 minutes later, we're on the boat, and the last 2 cars in line, side by side on the back of the boat. The ride across the bay takes about 20 minutes, so it's common for people to mill around the boat. There are restrooms and sitting areas. D-bag gets out and gives me a crap-eating grin and gestures like, "F you, I made it" to me. He then goes inside the boat's superstructure towards the bathroom. I can't help but notice Mr. Turd has been gone for a while, and I have a bag of pretzels in the front seat, so I grab the bag of pretzels and walk to the back of the boat where they allow you to feed the seagulls. I make it rain with pretzels until there's probably a good 40 to 50 seagulls captivated by the bag of pretzels. Mind you, we're both parked right by the back of the boat, so I make sure that I conduct my feeding activities squarely behind his car and away from mine. And in short order, my flock of seagull parishioners do what they do best, cover his D-mobile in gigantic seagull craps. I even stealthily threw a bunch of pretzels on top of his SUV to make sure they spent a lot of time crawling all over the vehicle. Presently, I see the peninsula coming up fast. We'll be there in maybe 5 minutes. I start walking back with about a quarter of a bag of pretzels left, and I realize that Mr. D-bag has left his front windows open. The opportunity's way too good, so I pitch the bag of pretzels into the second row of his seats and climb back in my car. Sure enough, as soon as I'm in the car, the seagulls bombard the D-bag's SUV. By the time he came waddling out when they sounded the arrival horn, there were probably 15 seagulls thrashing around the inside of his car, fighting over the bag of pretzels, and the outside of his car was covered in seagull crap. He started freaking out, yelling at the birds, and engaged a losing battle to get them out of the car. Never even looked back at me, and I don't know if he ever put 2 and 2 together, but holy crap did he get heated. He was screaming and swearing and carrying on at the birds, and by the time we docked and I drove off, he had just finished getting the birds out of the car and was scrubbing seagull crap off his dash and driver's seat with his t-shirt. Rotten hell, line jumper. This is absolute petty revenge gold. The fact that the guy doubled down on his smugness when he thought he'd gotten away with it just makes the payoff even sweeter. This guy learned the hard way that cutting in line might save a little time, but could cost a whole lot more in dignity and dry cleaning. Bravo! And our last story. Karen blocked the ambulance, so we blocked her life. Background. In my city, it's not uncommon to find small apartment complexes nestled next to single-family homes. I live in one of these complexes, a charming building with 10 units and a shared backyard. The building also has a private parking lot next door which fits 10 cars, 1 for each apartment. The lot is clearly marked with signs declaring it as private property. Additionally, there's a side entrance from the parking lot leading to the backyard, which is vital for some tenants, especially one elderly resident who requires ambulance assistance for regular medical treatments. When I moved in years ago, I was soon designated as the unofficial superintendent, acting as the go-between for the tenants and the landlord. The landlord, Mr. Harris, only visits once a year since he lives abroad, but he's quick to act on any issues we bring to him. Trouble started when the house across the street, long abandoned, was bought by a couple I'll call Kyle and Karen. They moved in with grandiose plans, tearing down fences, remodeling the yard, and hosting loud gatherings every weekend, but their sense of entitlement didn't stop there. Soon after moving in, Kyle and Karen began parking their cars in our private lot. At first, we politely informed them that the lot was reserved for residents. They would move their cars begrudgingly, but as soon as the spaces were empty again, their cars would reappear like clockwork. 2 of our spaces, one reserved for the landlord and another for a tenant without a car, were their favorite spots. When I notified Mr. Harris, he told me to document everything, so I started snapping pictures, logging incidents, and notifying the police whenever necessary. Each time, Kyle and Karen would receive a fine, and each time Kyle would sneer, "I'm not paying that." One day, Karen parked her car directly in front of the side entrance, blocking it entirely. This was beyond infuriating because the tenant in the ground floor unit relies on that entrance for ambulance drop-offs after her dialysis sessions. When asked to move the car, Karen dismissed it, saying, "I'll park wherever I want. Figure it out." Not even police intervention could persuade them to change. When Mr. Harris arrived for his annual visit, I handed over the meticulous documentation I had gathered. After reading through it, he nodded and said, "Don't worry, I'll handle this." The revenge. Mr. Harris told us to leave the parking space next to Karen's car empty for the weekend. We complied, curious about his plan. On Sunday evening, a tow truck rolled into the lot hauling in an old beat-up Mazda. The car was strategically parked, perfectly blocking both of Karen's cars. I was woken up early by the buzzing of my intercom. Karen and Kyle were outside fuming and demanding I come down. When I opened the doors, they were yelling about how they couldn't move their cars. Mr. Harris calmly walked out behind me wearing a smile that could cut steel. Kyle exploded. "What the hell is this? Move your piece of junk car right now." Mr. Harris, ever the gentleman, replied with a smirk, "It's my car, legally parked in my lot. What are you going to do about it?" Kyle turned beet red, stormed back to his car, and, against all reason, slammed it into the Mazda, attempting to push it out of the way. The crunch of metal echoed through the lot. Mr. Harris's smile widened into something predatory. He pulled out his phone and immediately called the police. When they arrived, he pressed charges for property damage and reckless driving. It turned out that Mr. Harris had bought the Mazda from a relative's repair shop and insured it as a restoration project. The court deemed Kyle fully liable for the damages. Things only got worse for Kyle. It was discovered that he hadn't paid any of the parking fines he'd accumulated, which now totaled nearly $3,000. Adding insult to injury, Kyle's leased cars were repossessed after his insurance company dropped him for deliberately causing an accident. Kyle and Karen were hit with hefty lawsuits, and though Kyle eventually managed to get another car, he learned his lesson. They haven't parked in our lot since, and they keep their distance from me and Mr. Harris. As for the Mazda, Mr. Harris had it towed back to his relative's shop, looking as pleased as ever. Victory never tasted so sweet. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.